Happy Father's Day, everyone. Today, I'm going to attempt to beat Pokemon Crystal with only a Ditto. Of all the Generation 2 challenges I originally planned, I think that this one has the highest likelihood of being completely impossible. So why is Ditto going to be such a challenge? Well, basically because of its move pool, if you can even call it that. It only learns Transform. Now, like a Pokemon like Smeargle, which I've played previously, this move does give it access to any other move in the game. However, when you're doing a Generation 2 playthrough, all of the enemy Pokemon are not known for their incredible learn sets. Plus, Transform has some very weird quirks. So while the footage is rolling and I'm getting started with the early portions of the game, I want to go through and explain how this move works in depth. When Ditto uses Transform, it becomes the opponent's Pokemon. This changes Ditto's type from normal to whatever the opposing Pokemon is. So for example, if I am copying a Pidgey, then I will turn into a normal flying type. Ditto also copies the opposing Pokemon's moves. However, this comes with a catch because each of the copied moves will only get a maximum of 5 PP. Honestly, it's really frustrating that they chose to code the game like this, because if Ditto got the full amount of PP for every move, I think that this challenge might actually be possible. Here's my theory about why they coded it this way. If your Ditto transformed into an Onix which only knew Tackle, let's say, then you would be stuck using Tackle against a Rock type, and the battle would take a really long time, so they were just like, well, we'll only give you 5 PP in Tackle, and then if the move that you copied isn't working, you can use Struggle instead. And believe me, Struggle is going to be an important move, but I'm going to deal with that one later. So let's continue talking about Transform and how it relates to stats. For base stats, Ditto has an even 48 in all of its stats. And the reason I bring this up to explain Transform is because as Ditto levels up, its stats will improve. But when you use Transform, Ditto actually copies the opposing Pokemon's stats, with one key exception, and that is the fact that Ditto does not copy the opposing Pokemon's HP stat. So that's how Transform works, and it has a really annoying consequence for the early game. So take for example this level 3 Caterpie that I'm facing. Going into the battle, my Ditto has 11 in all of its stats, and then once I use Transform, my Ditto only has 7 in its attack, defense, and speed, and 6 in its special attack and special defense. What this means is it's very hard for Ditto to train in the earliest portions of the game, because you're always on even footing against the opposing Pokemon. As a result, it takes me a very long time to knock each opponent out, which is really annoying because all of my playthroughs are essentially speedruns. I rank the Pokemon based on their real time completing the game, and in this case, I expect Ditto is going to be like somewhere between 6 and 10 hours if it is even able to beat the game. And now I want to mention another problem. Even when Ditto has more HP than the opponent Pokemon, some of these Pokemon are still dealing a lot of damage because once I transform, I do not have very much defense. You might ask, why don't I just use a potion? And for that I would say consult my rules, which are in the description of the video. Using items in battle is banned. All I can do is use held items. So in this case, this random Pidgey is actually going to knock my Ditto out and give me my first reset of the playthrough. Now here I should just mention that this is not technically a reset because I am actually going to allow myself to black out here to keep the experience that I've gained so far. However, I am going to add 1 to the reset counter just because this is essentially a metric that I use to track the number of times a Pokemon has failed. Okay, so now it is time to hunker down and train a little bit before I take on the rival. Technically, you can lose this fight and the game lets you continue playing, but I don't really like to do that, plus I would like the experience. During this training, I learned something interesting, which is against Hoppip, which show up in the wild, you can actually use Transform, and then the only move that you can use is Splash, which is actually very convenient, because once you deplete it, you can use Struggle to knock the Hoppip out, and this is the freest form of experience that I have access to at this point in the game. And it's also worth noting that I can't really defeat Weedles. Like, I could, but I take a lot of damage from their Poison Sting. My Poison Sting does almost no damage, and then I have to finish them off with Struggle, so I think just running away from these is the faster choice. And now as I complete the training up to level 7, I want to mention Ditto's growth rate. For these challenges, the ability to level up quickly in the early game is very important. As a result, the medium-slow growth rate tends to be the best performing growth rate so far. If we look here at all the data I've collected from my playthroughs, you can see that of the top-ranked Pokemon, they're mostly medium-slow growth rate. You might wonder, isn't the fast growth rate better than this? And the answer is no. The fast growth rate levels up more slowly than the medium-slow growth rate until level 30. And slower than both of those two growth rates is the medium-fast growth rate, which is the growth rate that Ditto has. So that's pretty unfortunate for me. I am just so thankful that this thing isn't a slow growth rate Pokemon. that would have made this challenge, like, so much worse than it already is. Okay, so now that I'm level 7, let's take on the rival. For this challenge, I decided to use the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to replace Totodile, and this is so that the rival will pick Chikorita. Now, I just finished a series of Versus videos using the starters in Pokemon Crystal. Now, if you haven't seen those videos, I'm going to give a spoiler for the results. Granted, I don't think it is that much of a surprise that Meganium ended up performing the worst out of all the starters. So you might wonder why I'm going up against the Chikorita, and the reason is that I want Ditto to have the hardest possible time in this playthrough. And yes, the Chikorita team that the rival has is by far his most powerful team. This is just because Bayleaf learns Razor Leaf at an early level, and that move is far more powerful than, say, Water Gun or Ember, which are its counterparts. Anyways, let's get back to this battle, and you will have noted that I actually spammed out all of Transform's PP before this, so that I can just defeat the Chikorita using Struggle. However, there is one downside to this approach, because I would like to continue using Struggle. However, after the battle, the game automatically heals you. You can see that in the top left, because now my Transform PP is set back to 10. So after heading to Newbark Town, I head north towards Violet City, and here the game starts throwing trainer battles at you. So before I face youngster Joey, I want to talk about a couple of edits that I'm going to be making with the footage throughout the rest of the video. Normally, before going into a battle, I am going to save, and I am also going to heal my Ditto with potions. If the footage looks like I did not do that, I likely just cut out the frames that showed me doing that, because otherwise the video is going to look really bad, and it is going to take a lot longer for us to get through all of the footage. So every time you see me going into a battle, assume that I've saved and that I've healed my Ditto. I will hopefully catch it and mention it every time I don't do those things. Alright, so against youngster Joey, I can transform into a Rattata, so I have access to Tackle and Tail Whip. Luckily in this case, I keep my normal typing, giving Tackle the same type attack bonus, and as a result, this battle is very easy. However, against youngster Mikey, things are not nearly as easy because I have to transform into a level 2 Pidgey. I thought that this battle was going to result in my second reset, but it actually doesn't, and I actually managed to defeat him fairly easily despite my awful stats. But coming up next on the route is another trainer, and I'm going to try and fight all of the trainers in the game with Ditto, because I figure I'm going to need level 100 if I have any hope of beating Red. So next is Bugcatcher Dawn, and here I have to transform into a level 3 Caterpie. Now the problem with this transformation is that in addition to my uses of Tackle, I have a secondary move which is String Shot, and that is not particularly useful. I defeat the first Caterpie using 4 tackles, and that does mean that I'm going to have to defeat the second Caterpie using Struggle. And unfortunately for me, I do not have enough time to use all of my string shots because his Caterpie finishes me off first. However, I think there's a way to play this a little bit better. I can use some string shots on the first Caterpie and then knock it out with Tackle, and then after that, I'll get to struggle faster on the second Caterpie, and in this case, it just barely works. I survive with 2 hit points left over. However, Ditto's not in the clear yet. After picking up this Bitterberry, I hop over the ledge, and I was figuring that I should skip Bugcatcher Wade because he has a team of 4 Pokemon, and I didn't know that this guy's range was as good as it is, so he catches me. And now I want to talk about something which is going to plague Ditto throughout the rest of the playthrough. And that is trainers that have more than 3 Pokemon on their team. If you use Transform, then you have to use a small amount of PP to defeat a large team, which is really challenging. And then if you just go into the battle using Struggle the entire time, then your HP becomes a serious resource. It is likely that the opponent is going to get some chip damage in, and you're going to deal a decent amount of recoil damage to yourself. Now, while trainers like this won't really be an issue in the early game, outside of Bugcatcher Wade, yes, I am going to take a loss here. Battles like this are going to be a big problem in the late game. In this case though, I'm just going to take the blackout and keep my experience. By the way, now that I'm reviewing the footage, I have no idea why I tried to fight him again. Like, there is no hope for me to win here. So yeah, that is another blackout to Bugcatcher Wade. I'm not going to make the same mistake again for a 3rd time, so this time I'll just skip him and head into Violet City. Okay, so now that I've made it to the first town, I'm going to head back to the grass and spam out all of the uses of Transform so that I can use Struggle. I'm just finding that using Transform is not performing particularly well, so while I will be taking recoil damage, which is one of my least favorite things in the world, at least I'll be dealing consistent damage. The first fight I attempt this way is Birdkeeper Abe, who is the first trainer within the Violet City gym. Oh, and for this battle, I did forget to heal my Ditto, so whoops. And this is a big problem because Peck is dealing a lot of damage. By the way, despite the Spearow knowing both Growl and Leer, this Birdkeeper has an AI modification, which is AI offensive, and that means that he is always going to be spamming Peck against me. He is never going to use one of his other moves. As a result, the Spearow is just dealing too much damage, and Ditto gets its 5th reset. So how does this fight go if I've healed my Ditto? And the answer is that while I do take the Spearow down to red health, it still beats me. So that's really frustrating. I tried again, but this time Ditto knocks himself out with Struggle Recoil. And 4th time's the charm, right? And the answer is yes, because Ditto gets a critical hit with Struggle, allowing me to deal more damage all at once, which means I take less damage from Peck overall. And finally, I have defeated Birdkeeper Abe. However, things are really not going well there, so I think I need to do some training before I take on Falkner. Now you think that I might want to train around Violet City, but I don't want to do this just because Bellsprouts show up, and if I transform into a Bellsprout, I'm not going to be able to knock out the opposing Bellsprout particularly quickly with Vine Whip. So I'm going to head back through Cherry Grove City, bypassing all the Weedles, to Route 29, where I can fight Sentret, Pidgey, and Hoppip. And I just want you to look up and note the time right now, 18 minutes and 24 seconds as I go into this battle. And then we're just going to cut to the last battle during this training, and the clock is at 25.5 minutes. So yeah, this training takes a really long time. If you're a new viewer to the channel, you probably won't have read the small text in the top left, which says time played at 4 times game speed. So yes, I am playing on an emulator with a fixed frame throttle of 4x. And even with that speed improvement, this training has taken me roughly 7 minutes. And I only went from level 10 to level 12. So I wanted to find a better solution for my training. If I solve one of the Ruins of Alph puzzles, then I can fight unknowns, and they actually give decent experience. However, the problem here is that the unknowns only know hidden power, so they're able to deal a decent amount of damage to Ditto before I can knock them out with my own hidden power. So I'm basically going to have to go back to the center every time I want to defeat one of them. Maybe there's a better option, which is training on Route 36. There are still Bellsprout over here, but there's also higher level Pidgey as well as Growlithe. And one of those higher level Pidgey actually knocks my Ditto out, so that's embarrassing. This is the second time that this week Early Game Bird has given me a reset. Well, in this case, a whiteout. So maybe training is the wrong choice. Maybe I can just fight Birdkeeper Rod and defeat his 2 birds at level 12. After all, despite being your ground type move, Sand Attack can hit flying type Pokemon. This allows me to knock out the first Pidgey without taking too much damage. However, then on the second one, it hits with Tackle twice, taking Ditto down to 10 hit points. And as a result, I am going to take a whiteout on Birdkeeper Rod as well. Alright, well done Pidgey. You are clearly my nemesis. However, this whiteout is actually advantageous because if I just come back, I've gained more experience, and then I can do this fight over and over, gaining experience each time from the first Pidgey. While this might seem strange, I want to note the fact that trainer Pokemon give 1.5 times the experience that wild Pokemon give. Plus, this Pidgey is level 7, and where else in Johto would you be able to find a wild Pokemon that is this high of a level? That's clearly just impossible. So by the time my reset counter is at 11, I'm level 13, which is over a damage rounding threshold, and as a result, I'm dealing enough damage to finally defeat Birdkeeper Rod for the first time. However, I'm really not feeling very good about Falkner, but we might as well try and see how it goes. His first Pokemon is a level 7 Pidgey that knows Tackle and Mudslap. And as soon as I transformed into this thing, I realized what the problem was. Mudslap does not affect flying type Pokemon. In this case for Ditto, it would have actually been better if this first Pidgey had Tackle and Sand Attack. Because in this case, once I use all of my Tackle PP, I'm going to have to spam out 5 uses of Mudslap to get access to Struggle. And because of how much damage the Pidgeotto is dealing to me, this is not going to work, so that's one reset against Falkner. However, there is a very obvious solution to this. That's just head out, fight some wild Pokemon, transform 10 times so that I have no more uses of this move, and then I can use Struggle against Falkner. And in this case, the move does half to the Pidgey on my first turn. I take 3 damage in recoil, Pidgey uses Tackle, dealing 3 more damage to me, and then I finish his lead off. Because of the extra experience from fighting wild Pokemon, Ditto levels up to level 14, improving its health just a little, and now it's time to face Falkner's ace, Pidgeotto. Struggle does 1/3 to it. It hits with Gust, which is a same type attack bonus move. However, it's not doing that much, and because Ditto is holding a berry, it can recover health, and this would give me the time that I would need to use Struggle 4 times in a row, but in this case I only need to use the move 3 times, and that means at long last I have earned myself the first badge. It took over 37 minutes. I am now really dreading what is to come for the rest of this playthrough. However, the early game taught me something, and that is that using struggle is the better option. Transform just wastes time, and it's really frustrating. The problem with using struggle is that every time I battle a Pokemon, I am going to lose health. Now I could just spam out transform against Hoppips, but that is going to take a really long time. So what I want to do is purchase enough potions so that I can get through all of the next route's trainers, earning myself money and collecting items before I get to the next mart where I can purchase more potions and continue my struggle spree. I have to say, embarking on this strategy, I was fairly sure that at some point I was going to run out of money and potions and have to start spamming out transform before I would fight like 2 or 3 Pokemon and then have to do it all over again. When I beat Pokemon Yellow with only an Abra, this is what I had to do to train for Brock, and it took like 3.5 hours to get to a level where I could finally defeat him, so I am really hoping that that is not going to be how I have to defeat most of the late game with Ditto. Okay, so let's catch up with where I am in this playthrough. I have defeated all of the trainers from Violet City to just outside of Azalea Town, where waiting for me is Hiker Anthony. I notably do remember to save before him, which I'm going to show on screen, and that's because he has a Machop which knows Low Kick, which is super effective against Ditto. That is one of the downsides to not using Transform. You don't change your typing, so every time I have to face fighting type Pokemon, I have to be a little bit careful. Now if you're a fan of Generation 1, you might be worried about me using Struggle against his first Geodude, so I should take the time to describe how this move works in Generation 2, because it was changed. So in this game, Struggle has base 50 power, it has 100% accuracy. Yes, it does not bypass accuracy checks, so Struggle is affected by moves like Sand Attack or Double Team. It deals 1/4 of the damage dealt in recoil damage. By the way, this number is always rounded down, so if you deal 3 damage to the opponent, then you will take 1 damage in recoil. And finally, the most important thing, especially for facing rock types, is the fact that Struggle deals typeless damage. This has a downside because Ditto does not get the same type attack bonus with Struggle. However, it does mean that I can deal neutral damage to rock type Pokemon as well as dealing damage to ghosts. Unfortunately for me in this fight, Machop's Low Kick deals too much damage and Ditto goes down. I am so sad that I didn't defeat that Machop. It has so little health left over. So I unfortunately saved on the wrong side of Hiker Anthony, but I'll just walk by him and we'll come back and fight him later if I need the experience. For now, I'm going to head into Slowpoke Well and defeat all of the Rockets here. And in this case, we get another piece of information that is incredibly important for the rest of Ditto's playthrough. Whenever this thing gets confused and it is using Struggle, things get very bad. The reason is that when I hit myself in confusion, the opponent can deal chip damage, and then whenever I attack, I deal recoil damage to myself, and all of these factors stack up to work against Ditto's most important resource, which is its health stat. In this case, I hit myself 3 times, so I only have 9 hit points left over for when the Ekans finally comes out. My first struggle deals more than half, taking me down to 5 hit points. Ekans goes for Poison Sting, gets a critical hit, and finishes Ditto off. So let's go back into that battle. Here, I want to mention that in most of my playthroughs, I try and narrate every single reset so that all of you have a sense for how the playthrough plays out. My goal for these videos is always to present the playthrough as it happened. After all, to the dismay of my ego, most of you comment when I make mistakes anyways, and that is good for the YouTube algorithm. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but once again in the next battle, Supersonic is causing the same problem, and again Ditto gets a reset against this rocket. So I am able to defeat her in the next battle, but from here on out I am not going to be describing every single reset I get. At some points I'm just going to gloss over a couple, because from the early game I think we can all tell that random NPCs are occasionally going to give Ditto problems. Okay, so here it is time to make a note. This footage is unedited. I was walking down here and I accidentally walked in front of this rocket without saving. And also without healing. So my Ditto goes into this fight with half health. And yeah, we know what this is going to cause. This is going to cause another reset, because in this battle, the trainer also has 2 Zubats, which know Supersonic. I never thought that this move was going to be a significant challenge in a solo run. After all, it has 55% accuracy, which is just terrible. Anyways, so I'm going to have to fight this female rocket again. That's really annoying. At least I do defeat her this time. And then I manage to heal and save before I take on the next guy. He doesn't cause any problems, and the final rocket with a coughing also does not cause problems, and that leads me to the 3rd mandatory heal of the entire playthrough, where Kurt teleports you out of Slowpoke Well. So now I'm once again going to have to deplete all of Transform's PP before I can use Struggle again. But on my way back to the grass, Hiker Anthony catches me, so I am going to have to fight him. And here I want to make one note, which is the fact that when I transform, it actually removes my badge boosts, which is so frustrating. I didn't know that this was how the mechanic played out until I started looking at this footage in post, so do note that there are going to be the little badge icons down in the bottom left. However, whenever I'm transformed, those badge icons are doing nothing. My stats are identical to the opponent's Pokemon, which you can see if you compare to the opponent's stats, which are on the right-hand side of the screen. However, the really interesting thing here is that we have a similar glitch to in Generation 1, because when I use Defense Curl to boost my defense stat, Ditto's attack stat gets the badge boost added back to it. Unfortunately, unlike Generation 1, I cannot stack this badge boost, so when I go for +2 defense, it does not actually improve my attack stat again. However, with the small boost to my attack and +5 defense, I think that Hiker Anthony is not going to be a problem. I save all of the uses of Tackle so that I can use this move against the Machop, since Rock Throw would do much less damage to it, and by doing this, I am able to defeat him this time. With that fight out of the way, I deplete all of Transform's PP, and then I head into the Azalea Town gym to take on Bugsy. For this battle, I thought it was incredibly important to hold the Poison Cure Berry. This way, if the Kakuna gets lucky against me, I'm not going to be losing extra health on each turn against the Scyther. After defeating the Metapod, I still have a lot of health left over, and Ditto levels up to level 21, giving it a little bit more. Okay, time for the Kakuna. Struggle does almost half. It's setting up its defenses, which is annoying because Struggle does deal physical damage, so it is utilizing my attack stat. Then the Kakuna does poison me, but my berry cures it, and I finish off Bugsy's second Pokemon. So I'm moving on to his ace. Okay, I really hope that I'm going to survive the Fury Cutters. Scyther's faster than Ditto because I have -1 speed. It hits Fury Cutter doing a little bit. My Struggle gets a critical hit, doing almost half. Fury Cutter starts to stack up damage, taking Ditto to orange health. My Struggle takes the Scyther to red health with a second critical hit in a row. I can't believe it. Scyther uses Fury Cutter, taking Ditto down to 6 hit points. That is not good. I go for Struggle, and it does finish the Scyther off, but I have to survive the recoil damage. And surprisingly, it only does 2 to me, so Ditto lives, and with that, I have earned myself the second badge. It was at this point in the playthrough that I figured I should probably update my overlay so that when I'm out of PP, it displays Struggle instead of Transform. After all, I am going to need this move in the very next battle because the rival leads with Ghastly. However, in this case, it isn't really a threat because the only thing it can do to Ditto is use Hypnosis. Lick and Spite will both do nothing. It takes Struggle 2 hits to knock it out, and then I move on to his Zubat. Now this thing could be scary because it does know Supersonic. However, in this case, it misses, so now it's time for his ace, Bayleaf. Things are not very inspiring here after my first Struggle hits because it does what looks like a quarter. Luckily, I still have the Poison Cure Berry, so in this case, I heal the status that it inflicts on the first turn, and then it starts using Razor Leaf. Now this isn't doing too much damage, but it does get a critical hit, taking Ditto down to 2 hit points, and then my Struggle just barely doesn't knock Bayleaf out, and Ditto's recoil finishes itself off. I tried the fight immediately again, hoping that Bayleaf wouldn't get a critical hit this time. I know Razor Leaf is a high critical hit chance move, but I was just hoping. However, in this fight, things go even worse because the Bayleaf selects Reflect instead of Poison Powder. Now Struggle is doing so little damage each turn, and the Bayleaf once again ends the fight. Since I was just barely not 4-hitting the Bayleaf, I think if I level up to level 23 over the next damage rounding threshold, that I will be doing enough damage to take it out in 4 hits. I'll also have more health and more defensive stats, and that will probably make this an easier win. By the way, just so everyone knows, I am training on the bottom floor of Union Cave. There are the highest level wild Pokemon here, and that's not saying a lot because they range from level 6 to level 8. Anyways, it's the best I can do, and now the clock has ticked over an hour, and I am still not out of Azalea Town. However, I'm hoping that I'll be able to beat the Bayleaf now, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen in the first battle against it. It's doing just a little bit too much damage with Razor Leaf every turn. What I really think I need here is for either the Zubat to miss Supersonic or for the Bayleaf to miss 1 use of Razor Leaf. In that case, I'll have enough health to knock it out, and that's what happens in the very next battle. It misses Razor Leaf on the first turn, and then fails to get a crit with its next Razor Leaf, giving Ditto enough health to finally finish the rival off. Alright, so it's time for the forest, and here in my playthroughs I am starting to catch Oddish instead of catching Bellsprout before Violet City. The reason is that there's a higher percent chance to encounter Oddish, but here I am specifically saving after I talk to the Farfetch'd each time because I might have to reset in order to catch this thing because I've been saving all of my money and investing in potions. So I only have 2 Great Balls. And I really don't want to run out of Pokeballs while trying to catch Oddish. It breaks out of my first ball, I throw another one, and luckily this one catches it. By the way, this is a rare opportunity for us to see the evasion counter because the Oddish did use Sweet Scent against me. Anyways, I did program that, but it doesn't get used very often. After all, evasion boosting moves are banned in my playthroughs. Now, in order to boost my money a little bit, I can head back to Azalea Town and pick up the Charcoal, which is a fantastic item to sell if you are in need of money this early on in a playthrough. Also, I'm going to be selling all of my TMs that I pick up through the playthrough, and that's really weird. I am used to hanging on to these things for the perfect moment, but today, none of them are useful. Instead, for Ditto, the only thing that is really going to be useful is healing items. Now, one thing to consider is how much HP each one heals per dollar spent. A regular potion costs 300 Pokédollars and heals 20 hit points, so the cost per HP healed is 15 Pokédollars, whereas a super potion, which costs 700 Pokédollars and heals 50 HP, costs only 14 Pokédollars per HP healed. Honestly, these two items are pretty similar, but what we want to consider is the amount that each item is over healing. So for instance, if I need to heal my Ditto, but I haven't lost quite 50 hit points, then the super potion is going to have value that was not extracted. Whereas healing with some potions, which are slightly less efficient in terms of dollars spent, may actually be more efficient because I can heal more precisely. So in this case, I'm just purchasing potions to have a decent blend between the two. After all, every time I do use a super potion, I am going to save more frames because I have to spam potions one after another and that takes time. Now, if you've watched my Magikarp video in Pokemon Yellow, you will know that there is a better option for healing items, but I wanted to have these just so that I could go through the next few routes of the games while defeating the trainers along the way before I reach the department store. Also, I just want to draw your attention to an item that I usually don't talk about. It's in the daycare yard. There is a super potion over here by the little lake. Normally I don't pick up this hidden item, but today for Ditto, it's quite useful. Now that I've reached Goldenrod City, I head to the department store, sell a bunch of items, and here I make a mistake, which is buying potions and super potions. Here what I should have done is head to the 6th floor and purchase vending machine drinks. After all, a freshwater heals as much health as a super potion, but it only costs 200 Pokédollars, which is less than what a potion costs. Game Freak here is obviously trying to teach kids through some math that drinking fresh water is the best thing to do. Unfortunately for me, I'm wasting a bit of money right now, and we're going to see if that comes back to bite me later on. For now, with all of the surrounding region's trainers defeated, let's head into the Goldenrod City gym and take on Whitney. First, she sends in Clefairy. I go for Struggle, it does more than half, and then Clefairy uses Metronome, which selects Sonic Boom, dealing a fixed 20 damage to Ditto. I knock her lead out on the next turn, level up to 30, and now it's time for the Miltank. Unfortunately, it looks like Struggle is dealing about the same damage that I was dealing against the Bayleaf in Azalea Town, which means it is going to take me 5 hits to knock the Miltank out. Well, unless my 4th hit gets a crit, finishing it off. However, Ditto KOs itself with recoil damage. So the fact that Clefairy used Sonic Boom might have been why I lost. In the next fight, I make it to the Miltank with 8 more HP, and I'm hoping that this is going to give me the margin I need to finish it off. However, by the time I hit my 4th struggle and take it down to red health, Ditto only has 4 hit points left over, and Miltank is still rolling. However, it misses. I go for Struggle again, and now I just need to survive the recoil damage. And Ditto does, only taking 1 damage in recoil, so it must have rounded down there. That feels really great. Even if it didn't, I still would have won, but this was a very close battle, just like Bugsy. Okay, so in all my first playthroughs, I require myself to defeat the Sudowoodo before Ekritique City. In this case, this thing is actually a little bit scary because it does no low kick. And as a result, it takes Ditto all the way down to 10 hit points, and then I knock it out. Okay, so this was another close call. And because I've been having so many of these, I think it is time to explore the region and defeat all of the trainers in the surrounding areas. There are a lot of these places, by the way. I can go all the way over to the Lake of Rage, defeating trainers here. And then with them all out of the way, as I'm backtracking through Mount Mortar, I noticed that there's this guy standing on the high ground here, and I figured I might as well battle him. So he's got a Nidoking and a Nidoqueen. That's actually a pretty good team for an NPC in Johto. My struggle does less than half to the Nidoking, and then I noticed that these two have double kick, which is super effective against Ditto, so that's unfortunate. I have less than half health for the Nidoqueen. I also do less than half to it, and as a result, this NPC is going to give me a reset. Luckily for me, I saved right in front of him, so we're just gonna backtrack, head to the Ecruteak City Mart, and purchase some more potions. Once again, this is a mistake. I should be buying fresh waters. Next, I can proceed to the area west of Ecruteak City and fight all of the trainers here. There are actually a lot along these two routes, so this is going to give Ditto some nice experience. And then here I want to note that this footage is not edited. That means I did not save before fighting this Psychic. Now his team is usually not that scary because he just has 2 Slowpoke. One thing that I forgot though is that the second one knows Body Slam. It paralyzes Ditto, and once again I take a reset. However, in this case, because I forgot to save, I am teleported all the way back to the guy in Mount Mortar. So I'm not going to make that mistake again. This time, I save after passing through Ecruteak City, I make it back to the Psychic, and this time I'm able to defeat his team. Next is Olivine City, and here I usually catch myself an HM user, which is Krabby. It can learn Strength, Whirlpool, and Surf, so it's great for the middle section of the game, and it has a much better catch rate when compared to the red Gyarados. I picked up a free Ultra Ball on my way to Mahogany Town, and I was really hoping that this thing would catch Krabby, but unfortunately it doesn't, so I have to head back to the mart, purchase some Grape Balls, and then find myself another Krabby, which I luckily catch. I finish off all the trainers in the lighthouse, and here while I'm fighting Birdkeeper Dennis, I want to mention that at this point in the playthrough, I had realized that healing items were not going to be a problem. It does not look like I am close to running out at any point, and I also haven't been purchasing the most efficient healing item, so in this case I am not having any money problems. As a result, I backtrack to Goldenrod City where I can purchase an Abra, which I put off doing until this point just so that I could save money. This thing is really good to have in the mid-game so you can use Teleport when you don't have Fly. This allows me to backtrack to the early portions of the game, collecting some extra berries, and with them, I'm ready to head into the Burned Tower to take on the rival again. Okay, so his lead is Haunter, and my struggle does uninspiring damage to it. Like, it is more than half, and that means Curse knocks it out, but the fact that I have this affliction is really bad because next is Magnemite, which obviously survives my physical attack. I take Curse damage, which is really annoying. Luckily, Zubat is a one-hit, but I only have orange health left over for the Bayleaf, and even when the best case scenario plays out, it misses Poison Powder on the first turn. I am not going to have enough health to survive, so that's a first loss. Now I tried the fight again, hoping that I got like the worst damage roll possible on the Haunter, but it looks like this thing is never going to be a one-hit at level 38. Yes, my Ditto is level 38 in this fight. Normally in playthroughs I'm around level 29 to 32 at this point, so I'm definitely over-leveled. However, even at this level, I am not getting guaranteed one-hits against the Zubat, and so I think the reality of the situation is that I am going to have to train on wild Pokemon. I leveled Ditto up to level 40, hoping that this damage rounding threshold will give me better damage against the Haunter, but no, I am still not capable of knocking it out in a single hit. Also, the Magnemite is still surviving, so things are not going well. Okay, but maybe I will one-hit the Zubat, and in this case, I do, so that's nice, but I have less than half health left over for the Bayleaf. Now, Struggle did almost half, but unfortunately for me, my next one gets a worse damage roll, and so once again, the Bayleaf defeats me. It looks like the level required for this fight is going to be 43, so I head back into Mount Mortar. By the way, I didn't know what was over on this side, so I went and explored this area, and it turns out there's an Ether over here. This item could be useful for Pokemon that are running a move like Ancient Power and have to restore PP frequently during long areas like the Radio Tower. Now, the reason I came into this area is because I want to go back and face the guy who has the Nidos. Because I'm a higher level, I can now two-shot both of them, and this gives me some trainer-boosted experience. To complete my training, I spent some time by the Lake of Rage defeating Pokemon like Pidgeotto, and now, at level 43, let's go back and face the rival. I am really hoping that I can make it past this fight now. Because if you haven't been paying attention to the top left, my playtime is now over 2 hours. Most Pokemon that are decent at the game finish Pokemon Crystal between an hour and 30 minutes and an hour and 45 minutes. So at this point, I think it is fair to say that Ditto is going to be the worst performing Pokemon so far in Pokemon Crystal. Unfortunately for me, the performance is not looking that much better because I am still not one-hitting the Haunter. Okay, Magnemite's next, let's test this one, and Struggle does not get the one hit. Are you kidding me? It hits with Sonic Boom, my Berry does not heal me above half health, maybe just maybe maybe the Bayleaf is going to miss a move and I will take no damage. However, it doesn't, hitting Razor Leaf, and that's another reset on the rival. Okay, so something I very rarely do is reattempt major fights like this under damage rounding thresholds, but I'm going to go back just one level higher and see if that gives me the small damage boost I need to one-shot the Haunter. And in this case, it does. Also, it gives me the one hit on the Magnemite, and from there, this fight is much easier, so finally I have cleared Burn Tower. Now inside of Morty's gym, there is a guy with 5 Ghastlies, and I was a little bit worried about him because he does have a large team. However, in this case, I am one-shotting all of the Ghastlies, and the recoil is not nearly enough to threaten Ditto, so this is a victory. By the way, I should mention here, if you play later generation Pokemon, you might think that it's weird that Struggle is dealing this little damage to me, because starting in Generation 4, Struggle deals 1/4 of the user's maximum HP after each hit. Anyways, we are really lucky that that is not the case in Generation 2. So now it's time for another gym leader. Let's take on Morty. I have the Mint Berry so I can recover from Hypnosis. What I really want is one hits on the first Ghastly and the first Haunter so that I don't get afflicted by Curse. And in this case, I'm very lucky because I do knock them both out. Then Gengar comes out. In this case, it goes for Mean Look, which is not useful. So I finish it off, and with that, I easily clean up the last Haunter and earn myself the 4th badge. So now I have a choice of where to go next, and I am choosing to go to Mahogany Town. Alternatively, I could have gone to Chuck and fought all of the trainers on the sea, but I don't think that's as good of a choice because I am going to have to backtrack from there to the Lake of Rage anyways, because I don't think Ditto is going to have a good time against Chuck just because it's a normal type. And going to the Lake of Rage actually has a lot of advantages for Ditto, because after I defeat the Red Gyarados, which, by the way, is not going well, I actually do have one reset here, so yeah, let's skip ahead. After I beat the Red Gyarados, then I can face all of the trainers here that face you when you walk in front of these little pedestals. By the way, I show the first guy walking up here and then the screen fades to black. After that, I am just going to show the little exclamation mark so that you can see that I fought trainers at these pedestals, and I'll just remove the battles. Each time you encounter one of these pedestals, you have to fight the exact same 2 trainers, and this is going to give Ditto a decent amount of experience. With the final group of trainers out of the way, my Ditto is now level 47, and here there is an unfortunate reality, which is when I step in front of Lance, he is going to heal my Pokemon, which means now I have to choose. Do I continue and try and use Transform, or do I find Wild Pokemon so that I can use Struggle once again? I figured that the next fight would be possible using Transform because after I transform into a Venonat, I have access to Confusion, which is super effective against the opponent's Venonats. However, what I forgot to think about is the fact that they can use Supersonic on me, so I do get a reset here. I attempted the fight again, this time I get better luck and I do manage to win, but after that I think it's time to revert back to the Struggle strategy. And notably, just outside of Ecruteak City, it is really annoying to spam Transform, because if Ekans uses Wrap against you, then you're trapped in the battle and you can't escape. I guess if I was really thinking ahead, I could have purchased Pokédolls to escape from these Ekans, but that doesn't seem like a good use of my money. And then while I'm trying to encounter Pokemon here, I actually ran into Entei, which is fun because I can make Ditto transform into it for a moment. So yay, we had a legendary Pokemon, but only for a brief moment. Now we are back to using a struggling Ditto. Luckily, all the rockets are very bad, so I finish them off and head into Price's gym. Here, I wanted to do additional training. After all, once I defeat Price, I won't be able to fight these trainers, so I might as well take advantage of the chance to fight them now. However, then against the first guy that I decide to face in the gym, he actually gets quite close to beating Ditto, and this is just because the Dugong knows Rest. Now, Price's Dugong also knows Rest, so I don't think that I should fight him now. Instead, let's backtrack to the sea, fight all of the trainers here, and then head into Chuck's gym. Now, just inside the gym's entrance, there are 2 trainers which I call the tag team trainers, Black Belt Yoshi and Black Belt Lao. The first of these 2 is the one that scares me the most because he has a Hitmonlee and it knows moves like Jump Kick. Luckily, Hitmonlee doesn't have very much physical defense, so I was hoping Struggle would one-hit, but it doesn't. Hitmonlee goes for Jump Kick, however, I'm so overleveled that it doesn't do very much, and I finish it off. So the next trainer has a Hitmonchan, but it has mostly special moves. It does no Comet Punch, but this is a normal type move, so I'm not that worried about it. So while I defeat the rest of the trainers in Chuck's gym, I want to mention the interaction between Ditto and physical moves. There was a really interesting item introduced in Generation 2 called the Metal Powder. It increases Ditto's defense and special defense by 50%, even when Ditto is transformed. By the way, starting in Generation 3, it no longer applies to Ditto's defense stat when it is transformed, so that effect is a Generation 2 exclusive. Now, when I was initially planning this challenge, I figured that I would make great use of this item. However, then I checked the acquisition potion method, and unfortunately for me, you can only obtain this item in Generation 2 when you trade a Ditto from Generation 1. So unfortunately for me, there's going to be no legal way to get this item throughout this playthrough. However, later on in the playthrough, we are going to get to see another really rare item get used, so stay tuned for that. For now though, let's take on Chuck. Up first is Primeape. Struggle does more than half, it fails its Leer, and I knock it out. So that is the perfect start to this battle. Next, Chuck sends in his ace, Poliwrath. I use Struggle, it does about a third. Poliwrath sets up Mind Reader. My next Struggle takes it to orange health, and then it hits Dynamic Punch, which actually surprisingly does not do that much to Ditto. Unfortunately though, I am confused, which is the bane of Ditto's existence. I hit myself, and Chuck miraculously hits a second Dynamic Punch in a row, so that's a reset. I go back into the fight hoping that he's not going to get that lucky, but this time Dynamic Punch gets a critical hit and knocks Ditto out. Okay, so third time's the charm. Hypnosis misses, then he hits Dynamic Punch, but Ditto survives. I'm confused again. This move is so frustrating, by the way. Luckily, Ditto doesn't hit itself, I strike back with Struggle, and with that, I have defeated Chuck. And at this point in the playthrough, I realized my mistake with the potions, so I head to the department store and start to purchase fresh waters. By the way, you have to buy these one at a time, so it takes a while, but with my inventory full of them, I head back to Price's gym to take him on. He leads with Seal, and Struggle does not get the one hit. Seal goes for Icy Wind, but luckily it doesn't lower my speed. By the way, in Generation 2, this move only has a 0.4% chance of that happening, so I got very lucky. Okay, so it's time for the Dugong. I need to be doing at least a third to it with each hit. And I am, so I'm not going to have any problems here. Well, unless Aurora Beam lowers my attack, but it doesn't on the first hit. However, it does on the second hit. Luckily, I had done just enough to the Dugong to still finish it off. Okay, all that's left is the Piloswine. Looks like I'm doing about a fifth to it each turn. First turn, it uses Fury Attack, doing very little. I take it to half. Probably got a better damage range there. It uses Fury Attack again, which is really strange. However, on the next turn, it goes for Blizzard, doing a lot of damage, and then Price uses a Hyper Potion. Okay, so I lost to Price. That does not feel good. I think that there's an answer to the Price fight that isn't just leveling Ditto up more. I backtracked to Slowpoke's well because in here I can talk to this NPC and get the King's Rock. In Generation 2, this item does interact with Struggle, and so I can cause the opponent to flinch now. By the way, in these games, the chance is 30 out of 256, which is roughly an 11.7% chance. And while I'm in this area, I'm going to head to Union Cave to fight some NPCs that I have literally never fought on the channel before. Okay, so with them defeated, let's head back to Price. This time the Seal does lower my speed with Icy Wind, but that's not a problem because I'm still faster than Price's other two Pokemon. Okay, so now it's time for the Dugong. It hits Aurora Beam, doesn't lower my attack stat, and then my second Struggle causes a flinch, which is perfect. I finish it off and move on to the Piloswine with full attack. Now, it looks like I'm doing about a third to it. Piloswine uses Mist. I take it down to yellow health, cause a flinch, and finish it off. So with that, Ditto has earned itself the 7th badge, and this one is absolutely useless because it gives me a 12.5% boost to my special attack stat. And it should give me a boost to my special defense stat, which would be useful, but in Generation 2, there is a badge boost glitch. Essentially, I need to have my unboosted special attack stat, so before badge boosts, I need to have that value higher than 205 in order to get the special defense boost. And I don't think that Ditto is ever going to be able to do that, but we will have to wait till later in the video to find out. There isn't much else to do right now, so let's head over and face Jasmine. I'm quite worried about this battle. That is because both of her Magnemites know Thunder Wave as well as Supersonic. When using Struggle, Ditto doesn't really fare well when it has a status condition, so I've brought the Paralyzed Cure Berry into this fight to hopefully prevent it. Now remember, the AI does have a 25% debuff on Thunder Wave, so it has a chance to miss this move, but unfortunately the second Magnemite does paralyze Ditto, and it also gets a Supersonic off, so I'm really not in a good state by the time the Steelix comes out. Luckily, it misses Iron Tail, and then Struggle hits, doing... Oh no, that's way too little damage. There is no way that I'm gonna do this, unless Iron Tail misses like a million times in a row, but in this fight, it doesn't, and Ditto goes down. Okay, so let's spend all of the rest of my money on fresh waters, just so I'm prepared for some extended training, because I think I'm going to need to be a significantly higher level for this fight. However, just before I reached level 58, I realized that maybe it would be possible to defeat Jasmine if I transformed into Magnemite. The theory behind this one is that I can transform and use Thunderbolt to knock out both of the Magnemites, and then I can use Supersonic in combination with Sonic Boom to take down the Steelix. However, this strategy has a bunch of flaws. First of all, I have all of Magnemite's awful stats, which does not help. My defense is just not very good, even though I'm a Steel type. The second thing is that the limited amount of PP means that I'm not actually going to be able to knock the Steelix out consistently using Sonic Boom. I only have 5 uses, that's 20 damage per hit, and the Steelix has 103 hit points. Also, Supersonic is really inconsistent, and having only 5 PP of it does not necessarily guarantee me many hits with confusion. So in the end, Magnemite goes down, and I come back and try this fight once again with struggle. However, it doesn't work out, so I decided to use my rare candies and go up to a higher level to see if it might be possible to defeat Jasmine at let's say level 62. And this time I actually make it to her Steelix without being paralyzed. And then in this fight, I learn another disadvantage that Ditto has here, which is the fact that Jasmine has a Hyper Potion, and she uses it when Steelix gets to low health. So essentially, I need to knock this thing out twice. So that's another reason that the transform strategy won't work. However, in this case, the Steelix misses some Iron Tails, and my Ditto is actually able to pull it off. However, I had to make a very tough call here, which was, do I continue with the playthrough after using 4 rare candies, or do I save them for later on? After all, I know Ditto is going to need level 100. So I really do think it makes most sense now to reset and train some more so that Ditto can beat Jasmine at a higher level and I can save my rare candies. And because I know I'm going to need level 100, I might as well train a little bit extra, so I go all the way up to level 65 before attempting Jasmine again. And this level brings a major improvement to my damage ranges because now I can one-shot both of the Magnemites, which means I'm always going to make it to the Steelix without a status condition. And then this fight taught me something. While Struggle is going to get a 5 hit against the Steelix, remember Jasmine has a Hyper Potion, and if Iron Tail isn't missing, Ditto is going to go down. So the win that I got at level 62 actually was a fluke. I train up 3 more levels to the next damage rounding threshold, which is level 68, and then I attempt Jasmine again. What this damage rounding threshold allows me to do is now have a 4 hit on the Steelix, so even when Jasmine uses a Hyper Potion, it is going to take a maximum of 7 turns to knock it out, which is much better than my former damage range, which took 9 turns. Of course, it is still best that Iron Tail does not get defense drops, and I really want it to miss as much as is possible. Finally, in this fight, I am able to defeat Jasmine again, and now I can continue with the playthrough. However, the reward for winning this fight might not be all that good because next I have to face Petrol in the radio tower, and he is the first trainer in the game that I'm going to fight that has a team of 6 Pokemon. Like, I do know that earlier on there's the Magikarp guy. By the way, I commissioned art for him just because he's in basically every Pokemon game, and Serena did an amazing job showing him reeling in a shiny Magikarp, which I just love. It's kind of nice to think of him as this trainer that is not interested in actually battling. Instead, he just keeps reeling in Magikarp because he's looking for a shiny one. The poor guy should have visited the Lake of Rage a little while ago because then he would have figured out that there's a red Gyarados there all the time and he would have realized that shiny Magikarp is not that valuable. Okay, so now I'm ready. Let's face Petrol. What I am really hoping for here is the fact that I'm going to be able to knock out each Coughing with 1 hit from Struggle, and great, I am not able to get it. Luckily, the first one misses a Smokescreen and I knock it out. That Smokescreen would have been the worst case scenario from the first Coughing. From here on out though, I want to dodge poisons. Like Sludge has a high chance to poison, so getting hit by it is a little bit scary, but I do manage to make it to the 3rd Coughing without any major afflictions. Also, Ditto isn't taking very much damage from recoil, so I'm not worried about knocking myself out. Next is the Wheezing. Now this thing does no explosion, which is quite scary, but in this case it doesn't go for it and I finish it off with just around half health remaining. From here on out though, things are going to be much easier because there's only 2 Pokemon left, so Smokescreen and Poison aren't going to be able to mess me up, and with that, Ditto takes the victory. But I'm not through all of the tricky trainers yet, because the rival in the Underground does have 5 Pokemon on his team. The Golbat could have been annoying because of Confuse Ray, but in this case I take it out without getting hit. Then I one-shot the following Magnemite, so there's no way for it to use Thunder Wave against me. Okay, please knock out the Haunter, because I really don't want it to use Curse. I do move on to the Sneasel, which is always bad, but in this case it actually survives using a pathetic feint attack. Remember, this move is a special move and Sneasel has terrible special attack. Last is Meganium. Struggle causes a flinch, and because of that, I get a free knockout on it. So that's all the trainers in the Rocket plotline that Ditto would struggle with, so we're going to head straight through Blackthorn City into Claire's gym. Now there's a male cool trainer in here with a level 37 Dragonair, and I really like fighting him just to see how my damage ranges are going to be against Claire. After all, her Dragonairs are level 37 as well. It is worth noting though that they have better DVs, so their stats are slightly better. However, in this case, I don't think that matters because it looks like those Dragonairs are all going to be 2 hits anyways. Which does put a little bit of fear in me. After all, she has 3, and all of them know Thunder Wave. I am going to need to be able to make it through Claire with paralysis, which is a bit annoying. What I'm hoping though is that Ditto is just going to have enough health and enough good luck to make it through this fight. However, in the first battle, it's not looking good for me because after the 3rd Dragonair goes down, I only have orange health left over for the Kingdra. My struggle doesn't even do half, so I need to face facts. I'm definitely going to need a few more levels. By the way, here is a fun cut. I fought a bunch of trainers, and then I even went and fought Suicune at the end of all of this. Yes, I'm sure this will be painful for some of you that are watching as I knock out the box art legendary. So now at level 76, let's head back to Claire and see if this is possible. And honestly, in this fight, I got such bad luck with paralysis and getting chipped away at from the Dragonairs that I ended up deciding to reset and use some rare candies just to test damage ranges to see if leveling up more would be advantageous at this point to prevent some resets and lost time. However, even at level 82, I am not able to one-hit the Dragonairs. Like, they're still quite far away. Like, I think right now if I had to estimate, I would probably need level 88 to one-hit the Dragonairs, which is an outrageous amount of training. Like, the timer is approaching the 5-hour mark. This is beginning to become very painful. Also at level 82, I still lose to Claire because of paralysis. However, this fight basically just comes down to luck, and if I clear Claire, I'm going to get access to so many more trainers right before Victory Road, as well as higher level Pokemon in Victory Road that I can use to train up the last remaining levels. So as you can see here, I reset to before I use the rare candies, and I'm attempting to beat Claire at level 76. Turns out, I get really good luck, make it by all the Dragonairs with no paralysis, and this allows me to knock the Kingdra out, finally earning myself the 8th badge. So now it is time to do all of the extra training before the league. Note here that I am using the amulet coin just to get as much money as is possible in case I need more freshwaters for training later on. After all, it is going to be quite a grind because I have to level up to at least level 90 before the league, likely slightly higher. I only have 7 rare candies at this point, so if I want level 100 for Lance, then I'll need to level up to level 92 or 93 before starting the league. So now in Victory Road, the rival has 6 members on his team, and you'd think that this would make the fight harder. It probably would be a bit harder if the Magneton had used Thunder Wave. This move apparently is like one of the worst moves to go up against when you're using a Ditto, but in this case, if I don't have paralysis, I can just easily make it through the rest of the rival's team, once again confirming the fact that he is pretty bad in these games. Now it is time to start a very long training session. Here, I want to mention what I was planning for. I didn't want to have to beat Lance at level 100 because there are rare candies to pick up in Kanto, and it would be nice if I could prevent some training and use those later on. So what I do is intentionally train to only level 89, where then I use 7 rare candies, taking Ditto up to level 96. After that, it is key to deposit all my HM mules in the PC. This way I can quickly black out during the league and keep all the experience that I've earned for my next attempt. And now I think I'm finally ready to take on the Elite Four. Unfortunately for me, Will has a lot of annoying status conditions, and I am also not one-shotting the first Xatu, which is going to be annoying because then I'm not going to one-shot the second one, and it also knows Confuse Ray. However, Confusion is also not the worst status here, because the Executor, which does not go down in one hit, can use Leech Seed, and even after this Pokemon faints, this status continues to afflict Ditto, and it drains so much health per turn. Plus, it heals the opponent, and it heals them a lot because I am so overleveled. And as a result, Ditto has a loss against Will. However, this isn't the worst thing ever because I want to backtrack to Goldenrod City and pick up an item that I have literally never used. To do this, I have to buy myself an Abra in the game corner, and then I go up to the 5th floor of the department store where I can trade this Abra for a Machop. I think that Abra is provided to the player very easily through the game corner so that you can get this Machop and then use it against Whitney. However, of course, this is a solo challenge, so I'm not going to be using the Machop, but it is holding an item, which is the Gold Berry. Essentially, this is just a citrus berry, and by the way, there are no trees in the region where you can pick this naturally. So this is one of a few annoying ways that you can obtain it, but basically the only method that I'm going to have available to me today. However, I really want to save the Gold Berry for later on, so let's take on Will again without it. Luckily for me, this time the Executor goes for Psychic, and I have quite a bit of health left over, which allows me to make it through Will's Slowbro, as well as his Xatu. Although, I didn't make it through with very much margin for error, I was on red health. Okay, so up next is Koga. He leads with Ariados, and I just barely don't get the one hit, allowing it to set up double team. And here we can see that Struggle is not bypassing accuracy checks, so it misses on the next turn, I take some chip damage, and then I finish his lead off. Next is Venomoth. Luckily, I get the one hit on it and move on to Fortress. Now, damage ranges are very important against this thing, because I don't want it to use Explosion. It does this when it's under 50% health and the player only has one Pokemon left. Luckily for me, my first Struggle does not take it under 50% health, so then my second one takes it to red, and because I'm outspeeding, it is not going to select Explosion, so I finish it off. Muck comes out next. Now this thing loves to spam Minimize, but today I get even luckier because I just crit it and take it out in one turn. Last is Crobat. Struggle does more than half. It sets up double team. Koga uses a full restore. I don't miss, taking it back down to orange health. And then my next Struggle connects, finishing Koga off. And then the dread started to sink in. I have to beat Bruno, who has a team of 4 Fighting-type Pokemon and 1 Rock-type Pokemon. Luckily for me, the Hitmontop is not very hard to take out, and it doesn't actually know any Fighting-type moves other than Detect. Then Bruno sends in Hitmonlee, which I outspeed, and Struggle gets the one hit on. Okay, so maybe I'll knock the Hitmonchan out with one hit, but unfortunately I don't, and it's going for Mach Punch, and it's able to hit me twice before I finish it off. Okay, but the Machamp is the one that I'm really scared for because it knows Cross Chop. However, it just misses, and this lets me get 3 Struggles in a row, countering Bruno's Max Potion, and I'm able to finish it off. So, there is only one Pokemon left over. It is Onix, which has a really good defense stat, but I'm not really worried about how much damage it's going to deal to me. Even with Earthquake, it deals pathetic damage, and my second Struggle takes it out. So I was able to beat Bruno on my first attempt against him. However, Karen is next, and her whole team is basically designed to mess Ditto up because the Umbreon has Sand Attack and Confuse Ray, and then the Vileplume has Stun Spore, the Gengar has Curse, and after I make it through this absolute gauntlet of status conditions, the Murkrow can deal some chip damage, which is really annoying, and then the Houndoom is going to deal massive damage with either Flamethrower or Crunch. Unfortunately for me, at level 96, I am not even getting the one hit on the Gengar. In my first fight though, I do cause a flinch, so I get past it and make it to the Murkrow. I do outspeed this thing and knock it out in one hit, and so I actually make it to the Houndoom with green health left over. Am I going to do it on my first attempt? I take it under half. It hits with Flamethrower. It would be really nice to have my special defense boost at this point. You can see that I don't have it because Ditto has 209 special attack after its boosts. And as a result, I'm just taking too much damage. Karen uses a max potion, and Houndoom finishes Ditto off. We're going to skip some resets here. I make it back to the Houndoom, but things are just really not going well, because usually when I get here, I'm cursed. One potential way to win this fight would be just to crit the Houndoom, so I knock it out in a single turn, but I don't want to keep rolling for that, especially when I think it is probably going to be best to just black out and continue my training. I'm going to come back into the league at level 98. By the way, this time Ditto doesn't have any problems against Will or Koga. However, what about Bruno? Because we need to see how much damage Cross Chop is going to deal to Ditto, and it's actually a lot less than I was thinking. And so, the second time I faced Bruno, I also managed to defeat him. I really thought that this was going to be one of the fights that I just had to keep resetting until I crit the Machamp or it missed Cross Chop, but I guess I'm just barely making it through every single time. Now, Karen is still a problem. If the Vileplume paralyzes me, I basically lose because then Ditto is very slow. And when I make it to the Houndoom and hit with Struggle at level 99, it just barely does not one-hit. Okay, so maybe, just maybe, I might get some damage ranges if Ditto is level 100. So I'm going to have to go back through the league. Here, I'm going to show the footage against Bruno again at level 100. And once again, I am able to defeat Bruno without a reset. Kangaskhan is obviously very jealous. Okay, so how is Karen's Houndoom at level 100 when I am not paralyzed? Well, I still don't get the one hit. Luckily, I survived Flamethrower with decent amounts of health. And I think this time I am actually going to do it. Struggle takes the Houndoom down to red health. I'm still faster than it, and I knock it out. Nice! So finally, I have made it to Lance. I anticipate that this is going to be one of the hardest challenges in this playthrough. This is because Lance has 6 Pokemon, and I have to defeat him with Struggle. It becomes very obvious if you just look at the Gyarados' moveset that this thing is not going to be able to defeat all of his Pokemon. However, I still have a big choice to make. Which item is best for this fight? First of all, I'm going into it with the King's Rock because I figure that this can give me the most advantages throughout the battle. If all of his Pokemon are going to be 2 hits, then this item has the chance to activate multiple times and save me a lot of health in the process. However, the disadvantage of this is that the Dragonites can use Thunder Wave against Ditto to paralyze it. So many times in my playthroughs, I'll choose Hidden Power Ice specifically to counter these 2 Dragonites just because of how annoying Thunder Wave is. Even if the Pokemon has good solutions for the following Aerodactyl, Charizard, and Ace Dragonite, if you're paralyzed, everything can fall apart and you can waste a lot of time here. Having Hidden Power Ice trivializes this fight, and as long as there is an answer for Pokemon that come later in the playthrough, I would rather go with that and have the consistency here. But today with Ditto, that's not an option. And because of how Paralysis cuts your speed, meaning the opponent moves first, dealing chip damage, if this status condition occurs, Ditto is going to lose. So I'm just going to reset right away. One way to possibly make things slightly more consistent is using the Paralyzed Cure Berry. So what I'm hoping for here is that one of the Dragonites will roll the 25% chance to miss. And that does happen when I have 51 resets. I make it to the Aerodactyl with green health. It does use Hyper Beam, which does a decent amount of damage, but now I'm making it to the Charizard with a good amount of health left over. Okay, I'm feeling really good about things. I take the Charizard to orange health. It hits me with Flamethrower. That's not so nice. I finish it off. And now it is time for Lance's Ace Dragonite. So I only have 62 hit points left. I am not sure that's going to be enough. And then Struggle does less than half. And Dragonite knocks Ditto out with Outrage. Okay, so let's use the Gold Berry. This makes the first 2 Dragonites much harder because I have to have both of them miss Thunder Wave, which does mean throughout this fight I am going to accumulate more resets now because it just isn't that likely that that scenario plays out. When I do eventually make it to Lance's Dragonite after healing with the Gold Berry, I still don't have enough health to knock it out. The second time I made it to the Dragonite, I realized another awful scenario that happens against this final Pokemon. If I don't knock it out in 2 hits, then it's at low red health, and Lance is going to use a healing item on it. In this case, my next 2 struggles actually managed to get much better damage rolls, and I do knock the Dragonite out, but this also causes Ditto to KO itself with Recoil. So let's talk about just what this battle requires. I'm going to 2-shot the Gyarados with Struggle, and then against the first Dragonite, I am going to have to either flinch it or have it miss Thunder Wave. So in this case, it flinched. Up next is the second Dragonite, and the same thing is going to have to play out here. Unfortunately, in this case, I get unlucky because it chooses Hyper Beam, which does some damage to Ditto. However, I can still get good luck on the following Pokemon because I flinch the Aerodactyl, preventing it from doing damage, and then against the Charizard, I get a critical hit and knock it out in 1 turn. Okay, so I've made it to the final Dragonite with 83 hit points. I go for Struggle, it does what looks like half. Dragonite strikes back with Hyper Beam, but it didn't look like I did half. My next Struggle does enough damage to finish the Dragonite off. But will Ditto survive the recoil? And the answer is yes, with 2 hit points. So, after nearly 7 hours of playtime and 86 resets, I have defeated Lance, although it was by a very small margin. And you might think that things are going to continue to be difficult from here because a lot of the Kanto gym leaders have large teams. But that isn't the case. We all know that these Kanto gym leaders are awful, and I am not even going to show you the battles with Ditto because I do not get a single reset on any of the first 7. However, Blue is going to be a different story. I usually find that this battle is about as hard as Lance, maybe a little bit easier because my Pokemon is quite high leveled by this point. But for Ditto, this battle is outrageously hard. First of all, the Pidgeot takes 3 turns to knock out with Struggle, so it gets to attack twice. And then once I defeat it, despite Alakazam having a really low defense stat, it is able to survive a single Struggle, giving it the time it needs to either use Psychic or set up Reflect. It became immediately apparent to me that if it uses Reflect, the fight is just over. The Rhydon that follows takes so little damage from Struggle as a result, and it's able to set up Sandstorm, which chips away at Ditto, in addition to using moves like Fury Attack, Rock Slide, or Earthquake. Luckily though, in the first fight against Blue, the Alakazam did not use Reflect, instead it went for Psychic, so I'm going to knock this Rhydon out in 4 turns. However, the Sandstorm is still in place, I have low health, and he still has 3 Pokemon left over, so this is going to be a loss for Ditto. So now I specifically want to talk about Sandstorm because it is a huge problem for Ditto. In Generation 2 only, this move deals 1/8 of your total HP in damage each turn. So once the Rhydon sets up Sandstorm, it will do 5/8 damage to Ditto, more than half my HP. Unfortunately for me, what this means is that if the Rhydon chooses Sandstorm, I lose. Because even if I make it to the following Gyarados, and I can knock it out, then Executor comes out, and I have to 3-hit this thing, which means it is going to get a Solar Beam off, doing enough damage to knock Ditto out. So in order to have enough health left over to survive until the Arcanine, I need to minimize the number of hits that I take throughout the rest of the battle. One way to do this is I need to get a critical hit against the Alakazam, so it has no chance to use Psychic. Also, then it won't use Reflect, and I'll make it to the Rhydon. Then the goal is for this thing to just spam Fury Attack as much as is possible. If it misses every turn, that is ideal. But this gives it so many chances to roll for Sandstorm, and so things are not going to work out. After being defeated here over and over, I finally have triple-digit resets. So instead of the leftovers, I was wondering if there might be a way for Ditto to do a little bit more damage. And now I want to talk about an item that I never talk about. So I'm going to leave the gym, I'm going to fly to Cerulean City, and then head north onto Nugget Bridge. I used to get a lot of comments about this item saying that I should do a run with Mewtwo using it exclusively, and I think that that would be fun at some point. But overall, I just want to avoid using this item if it is possible because it has some really awful side effects. And the item is the Berserk Gene. It's a hidden item that's here in the water, near to where the entrance to Cerulean Cave used to be. So I want to take a brief moment to just bring up the Bulbapedia page for this item because it's really weird. So the Berserk Gene is a consumable item that activates at the very beginning of the battle. It boosts the user's attack by 2 stages, but it also causes confusion. And it causes a weird type of confusion because it lasts for 256 turns. Now, I'm sure many of you have never even heard about this item, and that is because it is only obtainable within Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Anyways, can it help Ditto? And the answer here is no. It is not going to help Ditto win this fight. The confusion is just far too frustrating, and with my attack being raised, if I hit myself just once, this battle is going to be a loss. So I continued to try this fight over and over and over again, and I came to a conclusion. For all intents and purposes within my regular tier list, this battle is impossible for Ditto. As I neared 150 resets, I decided to take a step away from this battle and use some save states to test to see if this battle is even possible. I'm sure some of you will bring up Picaspray's video at this point, and no, I had not watched it before filming my own Ditto run. With Pokemon like this that are incredibly unusual, I don't like to go into it with too much knowledge from someone else's playthrough. I really want to be fresh and figure it out myself. So here is footage that I collected using save states, which is basically the perfect blue fight. I want the Pidgeot to use Mirror Move twice, because then it copies Struggle, dealing very little damage to me, and that allows me to make it to the Alakazam with the maximum possible health. By the way, I should note here that the Alakazam used Disable on me once, and it failed, so that is another way to get by the Alakazam that doesn't involve getting a crit. But for the perfect battle, I just want to crit this thing and knock it out over 1 turn. Now against the Rhydon, as I mentioned before, I wanted to spam Fury Attack over and over and over again, and I wanted to never use Sandstorm. This way I can make it to the Gyarados with green health. In this case, I crit it on turn 1, and that's incredibly important so that he doesn't use a full restore on it. Then, on the next turn, I can finish it off and move on to the Executor still in green health. This is all by design because I am most likely going to have to tank a Solar Beam here, and I want enough health remaining for when the Arcanine comes out. because things have gone so well, now I have a lot of health left over for the Arcanine, which is incredibly important, because with my current damage ranges, he is going to use a full restore on it, so I basically have to drain its health twice. However, Ditto is able to do it, so it can theoretically make it past Blue. And once again here I'm going to bring up Pick Asprey's video because I really want to mention the fact that he came to some similar conclusions as I did, like the fact that you need to crit the Alakazam. However, in his video he was not able to defeat Red without spamming full restores. However, I wonder if I might be able to do it just because I am playing with a genetically perfect Ditto, which I'm sure he was not. After all, if you look at his health stat, it isn't as high as my Ditto's. I will note here that I have paused the timer, so the timer is not going to run until I know I can beat Red. If I determine that I can beat Red, then I'll go back to before Blue and continue to try and get all of the RNG that I need to get an official finish for this run. I'm doing things a little bit differently in this video, and that's just because I don't want to waste another 8 hours playing with Ditto. This has been so painful until this point. So, can Ditto beat Red? Well, let's see. I knew that for this fight, I would need an absolutely perfect run of luck. If you use Transform, it is just not going to work because Pikachu would have to defeat Snorlax with Thunderbolt or Quick Attack, and if Pikachu starts struggling, it is just not going to be doing enough damage. So, staying as a Ditto, knowing only Struggle, is the correct choice. I felt that here I had the choice between 2 legal items and 1 illegal item, so I could use either the Leftovers or the King's Rock, or perhaps the Metal Powder. Obviously against the Pikachu, I need to knock it out with 2 hits, and I need it to miss Charm so that my attack stat doesn't get lowered. And then against the Espeon, we need a lot of luck. So first turn, I needed to use Reflect and not deal damage with Psychic. Then, on the follow-up turn, I need Struggle to get a critical hit, so I knock the Espeon out, and it deals no damage to Ditto. And here is where the luck starts to get really unrealistic. I have to crit the Snorlax, not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row, so that I can knock it out without it using Rest. So far, that is 4 critical hits in a row that I've needed with Ditto to get to this point in the fight with this much health. And then against Venusaur, if I score 2 more critical hits in a row, I cannot knock it out. Which means that once again, I take a Solar Beam, which does a lot of damage to Ditto. This leaves me with 57 hit points for the Charizard, and now I need everyone to look at the screen for this, because when I use Struggle, it does so little damage. Even with a critical hit, I'm not going to be doing more than half to the Charizard, and because Red still has Blastoise in the wing, there is no way for me to win this battle with the Leftovers. So what about the King's Rock as an option? And for this one, we have to do a little bit of math. If we add up all of Red's team members' HP and then divide it by 4, it ends up being 350. That is the amount of damage that Ditto would deal to itself in recoil. With just under 300 health and no way to recover health during the battle, Ditto is also not going to be able to win with this item. That is, even in the case where it flinches and crits every single turn. So it's officially at this point that I know that Ditto cannot beat the game. So it is the first Pokemon to make it into the impossible tier for Pokemon Crystal. However, as the credits roll, I'm going to show you some footage of me attempting this fight once again with the Metal Powder. However, I just want to remind you here that the math that I did for the King's Rock still applies for this item. So even with 50% more defense and 50% more special defense, Ditto just doesn't last long enough to knock out all of the Pokemon. So in this case, without using items during battle, it is impossible for Ditto to beat Pokemon Crystal. So now let's check in with my tier list. This month, I did a lot of Pokemon Crystal videos. We finished all of the Kanto and Johto starters, and that gave a lot of bloat to the upper end of the tier list. So with today's video, I wanted to make sure that we rounded things out a bit and put some Pokemon near the end of the tier list. Well, in this case, at the very end of the tier list. Now, one thing that I can do with the tier list is just change some of the metrics a little bit, and I'm going to do that now. I think that Pokemon that are under an hour and 15 minutes of time should be the S tier. So in this case, we'll shuffle everyone except Feraligatr and Lugia down to the A tier, and so on and so forth. Also, I still think that things are a little bit top-heavy, so we need to get some other bad Pokemon in this tier list. Like, where would Slugma fit? Or maybe Sunkern? Perhaps the baby Pokemon. So like, subscribe, and ring the chime echo so you'll be notified when those videos come out later this year. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much. It means the world to me. If you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.